All right, back for another beer review, and today I'll be reviewing yet another beer from the Tree House Brewing Company, and they are headquartered in Charlottetown, Massachusetts, and this is their Eternity, and I believe this is the 2020 release. So this is a barrel-blended Imperial Milk Stout brewed with chocolate, coffee, and maple syrup. It comes in 11.8% alcohol by volume. No IBUs listed. Time of review, I believe this is just under 4 months old, and that's because this one was sent to me by a very good friend of mine and a viewer of the channel, Steven. So huge thanks to him for this beer. In the description box, I'll post a link to the beer mail unboxing video I did that contains all the goodies that Steven hooked me up with. And he hooked me up with a bunch of different beer, including some aged beers, and this was one of the aged beers. And in the comment section of said beer mail, he did mention that he thought this one was 3+ years old, and he had a bottle recently and wanted to kind of get another opinion about it, so he sent one my way. So I went to Untappd and checked out his check-ins from Treehouse, and sure enough, he had this one back in October of 2020. So I'm thinking this is the 2020 release. This one was probably released maybe late September into early October, somewhere in that range, probably early fall. So I'm going to say this is just under 4 months old. I could be 100% incorrect, but it is the Beer Patrol, and that is very likely. But yeah, anyway, he wanted to see how this one held up. Now, again, it's a barrel-blended Imperial Milk Stout. You have chocolate, coffee, maple syrup. A lot of times adjuncts and whatnot don't hold up, so we will see. Also, 11.8%, I think Treehouse does a great job when it comes to these, when it comes to these beers, not putting ABVs on the bottle or bottled on dates. All their hop forward beer, for the most part, in the cans, always got dates. Not this. Usually have ABVs, not this one. They do have a spiel on the side, and the underside of that cap looks absolutely fucking gnarly and disgusting. So throw that over here. So I am hoping this is held up. He said he had one recently. It was held up pretty well. So hopefully we get all the adjuncts and whatnot. We will see. So give a pour into the hashtag proper glassware, and it's kind of poured out like motor oil. I'm going to drink this entire thing tonight, so I'll pour the entire thing in, and yeah, that did not generate any kind of head. Didn't anticipate generating a head, but it is what it is. So, got the black label here. Anyway, try to swirl up a head. I don't think it's going to happen, though. So, we got the hashtag, proper glassware. You probably can't even see the fucking logo because it's a black Treehouse logo, and this beer is basically pitch black, but you know what? Fuck it. Anyway, we'll show you the actual beer, how it's supposed to look. So, it is pitch black, poured out pitch black. Has a thin film of this dark brown colored head. It had almost a finger, has dissipated all those adjuncts and whatnot. Hold up to light, you can't see through it. I mean, it is what it is. This beer is black as night, 100%. Anyway, let's get a nose. 100% maple syrup, holy shit. The maple's held up so well based on what this beer sounds like it should be fresh and what I'm smelling right now. Dude, it smells like breakfast. In a glass. It's maple syrup. It's like a mild to medium roasted coffee. And there's more of like an underlying chocolate. And it's kind of like a more of a bittering chocolate, like 40-50% cacao bar. Some roasted malt in addition to that coffee. Touch of fruitiness, like a cherry, maybe like a plum, maybe a sugar plum. That maple is so intense. And again, I think this is almost 4 years old. I don't think I've ever had, should I say ever? Probably not, but I'm going to say I don't think I ever had a beer with maple syrup that's almost 4 years old or older that has such an intensity to the maple syrup still left. A lot of times when I get aged maple syrup, it's just like a generic sweetness. And I've done some whodunit/mystery beers where maple syrup's in there, and I'll just say, oh, it has this generic sweetness. And then after I reveal the beer, it's like maple syrup. I'm like, okay, that's the generic sweetness was that maple syrup. Nope, maple. It smells awesome. It just smells like a great maple porter into like a maple stout. It doesn't smell boozy. I couldn't tell you off the nose. This is almost 12%. So maybe a little bit of vanilla too. It's just, the maple is like 75% of the aroma, which fine by me. I love maple syrup. yeah, this smells fucking divine. Let's get into it. Cheers, everybody. Thanks again to Steven. Also, you can see some condensation on my glass. This is coming out of my darker beer fridge at 54. However, it's a bit warmer because we're in the summer. So cheers. Thanks again, Steven. I don't know how this one drank fresh, but I'll tell you right now, it's pretty fucking tasty. Wow. So the one thing I will say, it's, I think, just starting to turn a little bit. And by turn, I mean, there might be a little bit of like an infection starting to happen now, very slight, or it could just be how the beer is, because on the back of the palate, there is an ever so slight smidge of a sourness. And from my experience of aging beers and having older beers, usually when you have a little bit of that sourness, it's starting to hit like with the infection, and then maybe 6 months, a year, a couple years down the line, this will be fully uninfected. I could be wrong. I don't have any other, bottles of this to compare, but it's just very slightly, and it's not ruining the experience because it's, again, barely noticeable. It's on the finish, very slight. But holy shit, this is a maple syrup explosion. Buying this is medium to almost full on bodied for 11.8%, might be a bit thin, but it's not like over the top, like syrupy or super uber thick, but it has a nice, almost full viscosity to it, which is appropriate for the ABV. The mouthfeel, mild to moderate carbonation, but it has a smooth creaminess to it. Imagine that milk, the lactose is helping out both the body and the mouthfeel, but definitely the mouthfeel. It has a creaminess that's not like over the top, but I think it's really nice for a barrel-blended Imperial Milk Stout. The taste, front to back, there's maple syrup. It's omnipresent. It's the predominant note. It's present everywhere on the palate. It might not be always the predominant note, but for the most part it is. Like front of the palate, it hits. It might dissipate maybe on the second half of the palate, but it's very noticeable throughout the whole sip and on the palate as a whole. Underlying, again, more of like a 40-50% cacao bar. There's mild to medium roasted coffee. There's that, I'd say, more of like a dark cherry into like a sugar plum. There's a vanilla on the finish too, like might be from the barrel, right? It has this, and that's the thing, in the nose, I wasn't getting any kind of bourbon or barrel characteristic. In the taste, it does have a slight like bourbony, kind of whiskey, kind of like peppery caramel thing going on, but it also has a slight oak tannin dryness as well. That's the only reason I know this is barrel blended. 11.8%, big warm in the chest, slight astringency on the palate, but I wouldn't say this hides the alcohol well, but it also, it's not astringent or anything. It's just slightly noticeable on the palate and definitely into the chest. It is a sweet beer though. And again, that could be because this is aged, could be because of other reasons, but it's definitely a sweet beer. It has a pretty big sugary sweetness from front to back. It's almost 12%. I kind of expect that. That oak tannin kind of dryness and slight bittering sensation is nice on the back of the palate, but there's no real big bitterness. It has a mild bitterness and again, like a semi-dry kind of oak tannin finish. I would want more bitterness, and probably fresh has probably had more bitterness, but as it's aged, it's becoming more sweet, at least in my opinion. Maybe that's what it was like fresh. I have no idea, but that's the only detriment I think to this beer, is really that sweetness is pretty big. And I think that I'm super impressed that the maple syrup has held up. Like that, to me, is a win in itself. The coffee, if they didn't say on the label there's coffee and chocolate, would I notice that there's coffee and chocolate in this one? Probably. But I think I notice it a little bit more because they actually say it on the label. There's like a touch of like a roasted malt character too that's underlying omnipresent as well. So what do I think about this one? I think it's pretty fucking nice for an aged beer. It's not blowing me away. I think the body's great. I like the mouthfeel. I love the fact that maple syrup is here. The problem I would have with this one, and maybe putting down the rest of this, the last 8 to 9 ounces, is it might be a bit too sweet for me to finish like maybe the last 3 or 4 ounces. It's just a little bit too much, I would say. But it is a huge barrel-blended Imperial Milk Stout with 3 adjuncts, and it's aged. So I got to kind of understand that that's kind of where this one lands. So maybe it's not too sweet for what it's supposed to be and how much age is on it, but for me personally, just as a beer, it's a little bit too sweet, but it's still fucking delicious. Like that maple syrup itself is carrying this beer a long way. Let me take one more sip and then I'm gonna rate it because I'm in between two scores. And as I keep on sipping, I could be wrong on that. It might start with an infection here because that kind of slight sour twang on the finish is not there. Maybe that was just like my palate being acclimated to that first sip because it's really not sour. There's a slight tartness now on the finish, but yeah, maybe you give it like a year or two and maybe this would become infected. I don't know, but I don't have any more bottles of this, so who knows? So Steven, if you have any more bottles or anybody else from 2020, maybe open this one up in a year or two and see, is it infected? Hopefully it's not. So anyway, I am going to rate this one fairly based on what I have, what I think about this one, and I'm going to give Eternity, the 2020 release from Tree House, a high 4.25 and go 4.35. I was debating high 4.25 or low 4.5. I think the sweetness is a little bit of a detriment, so I'd probably give this around a 4.4 or maybe a 4.45, 4.5, but that sweetness is a little bit too much for me, so I'm going to knock it down, but still, a 4.35 for an almost 4-year-old aged barrel-blended Imperial Milk Stout with 3 different adjuncts that could easily fall off. The coffee didn't turn to green pepper. The maple syrup is very prominent. The chocolate is there to some degree. You get a little bit of the barrel. Yeah, I think it's really well done. So thank you, Steven, for this one. It's a fun beer. Price point availability, I have fucking no idea. I would hope that this bottle is not more than like $10. Usually with Tree House, they're pretty good with their individual bottles, typically around like 10, they're barrel aged like 10, 12 bucks. So that would be fine, 11.8%, crazy beer. And then availability, Tree House, you got to go to one of their like 6 locations and pick this one up when they release it. I think they release this one, if not every year, every couple years. I know some other friends of the channel and viewers like Phil, I think he said he had this in, I think it was like 2021 or 2022, and he enjoyed it. So they definitely do they definitely do rebrew this one, so hopefully they come out with this beer again this year, or maybe they already have. It also says keep cold, enjoy fresh. Well, I don't know if it was kept cold, and I don't know if I'm enjoying it fresh. I do know I'm not enjoying it fresh, but I think it held up pretty well. We'll read the back here, and this is where most people will fucking click off whatever. And listen, look at the tiny font here. Like, Tree House, the font is fucking redunculous. Like, what are we doing? So I already read what this beer is, which is the first paragraph. Second says featuring 43% barrel-aged truth blended with a base stout brewed with chocolate, coffee, lactose, and maple syrup. Eternity pours a dense fudgy color in the glass and puts forth flavors and aromas of a bourbon, chocolate, and maple shoes. I have actually said that before. But I wouldn't say it in this beer specifically because the bourbon isn't as pronounced because it's almost 4 years old. But I could see that probably fresh. Maple bourbon hard candy, yeah, same thing. And rich syrup tones. I still get the rich syrup tones. So 1 of 3 is fine for a beer that's almost 4 years old. This beer is everything good about a comfortable morning distilled into this lovely bottle. Keep it cold and savor it. It is special. Sure. No, yeah, it's fine. I would have loved to get, again, more bourbon, more spirit out of this one. It is what it is. So huge thanks to Steven for this one. Again, if you've had this beer before, any of the prior vintages, let me know what you think about this one. I really like Tree House's barrel-aged game. Obviously, their hop forward game is fantastic. It's been a while since I've had a Tree House beer. I think maybe like last summer. So thank you to Steven. It's always a treat to get Tree House, and I'm glad this held up. So thanks, Steven. Thanks, everybody, stopping by for another beer review here on the Beer Patrol. To the next one. Cheers.